So, good morning, everyone. How are you all? I hope you all are fine at your places. Since you all know that we were doing chapter number one, and we are almost at the verge of completing this particular chapter. And now we'll start with the seventh concept that we started in the last class, right? And I'll share my screen with all of you. Here I go. Here I go. I hope my screen is visible on your screen as well. Okay. So here is the 11th class folder. Class is going on actually. So what you need to understand here is that I put message in a group or not. If my timetable, you should understand it, right? I have to my your timetable has been already provided to you. So no matter I put that Zoom invitation in the group or not, it doesn't matter. You have to come at the right time in the class, right? So we were doing chapter number one. Okay, so. So kindly text me if my screen is visible on your screen, because I've started the share with all of you. Okay. So today we're gonna start the concept, right? Which we were doing the last class. Okay. So this okay. So we'll be starting concept number 7. This is 9th, and this is 7th, right? Okay. So am I audible to you? Kindly text me. Kindly text me. Okay. So we were doing chapter number first, and in chapter number first we were doing number seventh concept. All right. So earlier in previous concept, we discussed the intellectual ideas, right? The ideas that were very helpful for the earlier sociologists to actually start this discipline and start studying the society, and it really helped them to classify society as well. And moreover, they also understood the evolution, the growth of the society through different intellectual ideas given by certain travelers, given by certain colonial administrators, and they also understand the Darwin's idea of comparing society with the organic matter or with human beings, right? So all those intellectual ideas that were there in the intellectual ideas of or number six concept were very helpful for them to understanding the the evolution or growth of the society, right? And moreover, they also enlightenment period also started coming in, where people start questioning origins, people start questioning themselves, people start connecting things with they stop actually connecting things with the religious things, because earlier people used to only talk about they would only talk about the understanding of everything in relation to the religion. But now things were things were getting a change. So now we can understand the material issues, right? Okay. So number seven concept, the material issues that went into the making of sociology, right? So here, what we are going to understand in this concept is that, first of all, we're going to understand the industrial revolution. The industrial revolution, look at my cursor. The industrial revolution was based upon, okay. So the industrial revolution was based upon a new dynamic form of economic activity, capitalism. So when industrial revolution came in England, basically industrial revolution started from the Europe, and we always understand the origin of industrial revolution through England, right? So that's what used to happen. Their industries started being set up, new factories started coming in, and that gave rise to the economic activity, and that economic activity was a capitalism system. The social system that was actually developed at that particular time was capitalism, where people started collecting more and more wealth, and people start taking out profits and started utilizing the laborers and started exploiting them in their industries. So that was what capitalism was all about. It was all about the production of commodities, and more and more profit. We call that surplus value, and that's what your capitalism was all about. People started producing things on a large scale, right? So that's what capitalism was all about, and it came due to the industrial revolution that started right in England, right? So I also told you that capitalism involved new attitudes and institutions. The markets acted as the key instrument of productive life, and obviously in the last class also, when I started this particular concept, I told you that markets started coming in, because where they're going to sold their products, where they're going to sold all those goods that they were making in the industries, that they were formulating, that they were manufacturing industry, where they're going to sold it, markets. So early, before industrial revolution, there was no concept like market. But the moment industrial revolution came in, the moment capitalism start coming in, capitalism is a basically social system where everyone is trying to have more and more capital. Everyone is trying to accumulate, everyone is trying to go for more and more capital. Everyone is trying to expand their industries, everyone to get their more and more profit out of the situation, out of the exploitation that they were doing again, that they were doing of the workers, right? So markets came in, people started selling their products and services and labor. All those things became commodities. And I also told you that, what do you mean by rational calculation? People start saying that, okay, what's the cost of this particular good? So it was actually calculated on rational calculation, that it costs 500 rupees or 1000 rupees. People start buying the labor also. They were considering the human beings as commodities, and they were actually buying those people as commodities. And after that, it was all done on the rational calculation. Earlier there was no system like that which was existing, but the moment industrial revolution came in, it all started coming, right? Okay, England was the center of the industrial revolution. So as I already told you that industrial revolution was actually the revolution which was actually started from the England. Although there were other countries also, I mean Dutch was also there, Netherlands were also there, that started industrial revolution right from 16th to 17th century. But the industrial revolution on a large scale was started in England, right? So we generally consider, or we generally assume, the industrial revolution right from the country England, right? So in order to understand how far reaching the change industrialization brought about was, we take a quick look at what life in pre-industrial England was like. Before industrialization, agriculture and textiles were the chief occupations of the British people, and most people lived in villages. Like in our own Indian villages, there were the peasants and lads, or the blacksmith and the leather work, the weaver and the potter, the shepherd and the braver. So industrial society was small. So what actually here means to say, actually what this paragraph actually wants to say here is that before industrialization, before industrialization came in England, England was also like, like also like was it was like an Indian village where society was very small. There was no interconnectedness among the members or among the society. People also used to work the normal work that people Indian villages were doing. Like they were involved in the blacksmith, people who work with the iron. That's what blacksmith is all about. They used to do leather work, then they used to weave cloths, right? They used to do the work of pottery. So they used to play the act of shepherd, who rears their sheep. And brewer means people who sell beers and all those alcoholic products, right? So before industrial revolution, the society that was there in England was also pretty much similar to the societies that used to be there in India. So not a much difference was there when we talk about the pre-industrialization period. But the moment industrialization came, everything changed, right? So that's what we need to understand, right? So what happens, like all traditional society, it was characterized by close interaction. With industrialization, each of features stage. So so early, before industrialization or pre-industrialization, everything was very much simple. They were living simple lives. They were very closely related to their work. They were used to work in their villages only. Urbanization was not there, because the moment industrialization came in, people started going to the urban areas, and people started living in the urban areas. That's what gave rise to the urbanization. So basically urbanization comes out of industrialization. So no urbanization was there before industrialization, right? The moment industrialization came, look at that, what is written here: with industrialization, each of the features changed. So everything changed, right? Way of life of people was changed. People started working in the villages. People started working and searching for their work outside the village and going to the urban areas, and that's what actually happening, right? Okay, so I'm sure I'm audible and visible to all of you. Kindly text me. Kindly text me. Kindly text me if I'm audible and visible to all of you. Kindly text me. Okay. So that's what actually was happening, right? So there were a lot of changes that came in the England, after industrialization. I told you the, pre-scenario. I told you the pre-industrial scenario of the this particular country, and then I'm gonna tell you what happened. What were those fundamental aspects that came in. It also tells us about all those things. One of the most fundamental aspects of the new order was the degradation of labor. As I told you, that people started considering the laborers as commodities. They were actually, in the they were actually started buying them as on the rational calculation basis. So that's what gave rise, that it gave actually rise to the degradation of labor, right? The grade was actually coming down of the labor. People started assuming, or people started considering human beings had just, commodities, simple objects, right? So this was a new thing that came in, or the fundamental aspect of the new order was something like that: degradation of labor, the wrenching of the work from the protective context of the guild, village and family. Earlier, before industrialization, people used to work only their villages. People used to work only their guilds. Guilds mean association. So people had associations within their villages. People used to work within their families. So cottage industry was actually going on at that particular time. Cottage industry was going on at that particular time, and people use cottage industry means when people work in their homes only, when people work in their villages only, when they are not exposed to the outer world, right? So people used to work within their villages, within their guild. Guild means association, and people used to work within their families only. But the moment industrialization came, people started going out and going to the urban areas where industries were set up, and it all started from there, right? So it actually degrade the level, degrade the importance of labor, right? People started, buying people like commodities. People, industrialists, I'm talking about industrialists or capitalists, they started buying people just like, commodities, right? That's what degradation of labor means all about here. So both the radical and conservative thinker was appalled at the decline of the status of the common labor, not to mention the skill craft. So what was happening? Some people were actually in the favor of this industrial revolution, but some people were there who were radical, who were conservative. Now radical people are those people who are fundamentalists. Radical people are those people who are very basic in their thinking. Radical people are those people who are very conservative. So people who wanted to conserve this system. Which system? Pre-industrial system. Like people should work within their villages, industry should not be there, and there should be no urbanization, the revolution should not be accepted. So people who were actually against this industrial revolution, they were saying that it is declining the status of common labor. As I've already told you, I've told you the degradation of labor. So when I talk about the degradation of labor, then it means that the status of the common labor were getting down, right? So that's the reason, there were radical and conservative thinkers who were saying that this is not something which is, good for the laborer. This is not something which is good for the workers who are going to work in the industry, because their grade is going to, they are going to face degradation, right? And he also mentioned the skilled labor. People used to work with their hands. People who used to have, people who were skilled craftsmen. Skilled craftsmen mean people who work on the, shawls, for all those, weaving that they do on the shawls, or people who used to make paintings, people who used to do some manual work. Even they were also in danger with the industrial revolution, because they were producing, what were happening actually, they were producing few products, but industries with the help of machines were producing products or goods on a larger scale. So actually industrialization gave a lot of competition to the skilled craftsmen. Industrial revolution gave a lot of competition to the people who used to work manually, right? Because industries had the machines, industries had the power looms. Look, people who work on there are two kind of looms. Looms means machine, right? So people, there are hand looms and there are power looms. People who would work, or people who used to work on hand looms, used to produce few products in a day, right? But people who were working in the industries, what were happening? People who used to work in the industries, they were doing their work through power looms. So they were producing more and more products. So that's the reason industrial revolution was somewhere a very, very hard competition for the common laborer and skilled craftsmen, right? People started giving less importance to the skilled craftsmen, because they were going to the going towards the advantages of the machines, right? So urban centers expanded and grew. As I've already told you, that when industries came in, when factories started coming in the areas, they become urban areas. So urban areas or centers were expanded, and they were just growing and growing, right? And many people were going from villages to the urban areas, and that's how urbanization came in, due to industrialization. It was not that there was no cities earlier, but their character prior to the industrialization was different. The industrial cities gave birth to the completely new kind of urban world. It was marked by the soot and grime of factories. Soot and grime of factories means the dust, the dust or the pollution that comes out of the factories. That's what soot and grime means here. So by overcrowded slums of the new industrial working class, bad sanitation, and general scholar, and after that, it was also marked with the new kinds of social interaction. So everything changed. New urban centers started coming in, and people started going from villages to the urban areas, and the condition of the urban areas were actually not so good, because people were going to the urban areas, but they didn't have shelter to live in. So they started, you know what happens, this is what happens generally when people don't have, people can't afford to have a room, rent room. Then what they do, they started sleeping on the footpaths. They started, started living in the slum areas, and it is actually very bad, in terms of sanitation. So that's what actually was happening. Journal scholar means, journal sanitation was not there. It was a very dirty atmosphere, right? That's what happens in the slum areas, right? It was marked by the new kinds of social interactions. Okay, so everything was actually changing due to the industrial revolution, right? Okay, so these were the material issues, right? So why we need to understand the material issues? Now the question arises here, something like that. The material issues are very important. Look, the problems, the issues, as I've already told you, that this is a subject that studies, certain problems of the societies, right? So the problems that were actually coming due to the industrial revolution, the problems that were actually coming due to the capitalism, there was a need that was felt, that who's going to study the problems, who's going to study these processes, the new processes that have come in the society. Obviously, sociology is one. This subject is actually felt very badly at that particular time. That's the reason this subject came into being, and that's the reason we say that making of sociology comes in when we talk about the material issues, industrial revolution and capitalism and all those things, right? So I'm sure now you have understood both the number 6 concept and number 7 concept in the form of intellectual ideas. Intellectual ideas were important to understand the growth, to understand the evolution of the society, to understand how we're going to classify the society. So that really helps the early sociologists to classify the society, right? And after that, the material issues that actually came due to the industrial revolution or capitalism, it was also important for the early sociologists to understand this, because then only they will, they would start, giving birth to this particular concept. And that's what actually happened. These two were very important to understand the making of sociology, because sociology actually came in the mid 1830s and mid 1840s, right? So that's what used to happen, right? So okay, so okay, the factory and the factory and its mechanical division of labor were often seen as deliberate attempt to destroy the peasant artisan as well as the family and local community. So look what these actually line means. Somebody has come in. Okay, so that's what actually was happening, right? Mm, okay, so that's what actually happening, right? So okay, and look at these particular lines. The factory and the mechanical division of labor were often seen as a deliberate attempt to destroy the peasant artisan as well as family and local community. So what was actually happening here is that, when industries came, people felt that it is a deliberate attempt. They are, intentionally doing it to destroy the peasant. They are intentionally doing it to, to degrade the peasant, artisan and family and local community. Because earlier on, when there were no industries, people were, self-reliant. People used to work within their villages and earning their livelihood. But now people felt the need to go out and work and earn more and more money. Like, so it was actually kind of attempt. Many thinkers believe that it was a kind of attempt, right, to destroy the peasant, artisan, as well as family and local community, right? So how peasant? Because people earlier used to work in the fields. People were earlier used to work in the agricultural areas, but now people started going to the industrial revolution. Started, going into that industrial revolution, or started working outside their homes, right? So it actually disturbed the entire setup. It actually disturbed the entire structure of the society, right? Okay. For some, like Marx, the factory was oppressive. So Karl Marx, I've told you that Emile Durkheim was the father of sociology. He coined this word in 1938. So Karl Marx, this is a very important thinker in this particular subject. Now, what Karl Marx used to say, he used to say that factories were oppressive. Now, why he was saying that? He was saying that there is a degradation of labor, as I've already told you that the capitalists, the industrialists, what they were doing is that they were exploiting the the workers. They were exploiting the laborers in the industries by making them work for the longer hours, say for 10 hours, for 15 hours. They were making them work for the longer hour, and in return they were not giving them enough wages. They were giving them very less salary. So this is how industries were, you know industries or capitalists were exploiting them. That's the reason Karl Marx, who is a very important sociologist, he said that the factory was oppressive, and it was suppressing, it was oppressing, it was actually putting a lot of pressure on the labor section, people who used to work in the factories. So that's why remember that Karl Marx was always against the concept of capitalism. He was always against the concept of industrial revolution, right? Because he highlighted this particular issue, right? Okay. So another indicator of the emergence of modern society was the new significance of clock time as a basis of social organization. Prior to the development of industrial capitalism, work rhythms were set up by factories, such as period of daylight, the break between tasks, and the constraints of deadlines or other social duties. Factories production implied a synchronization of labor. It became punctuality, had a steady pace, took place for a set hours on a particular day of the week. In addition, the clock injected a new urgency to work for both employer and time is now money. It is not past but spent, right? Now this is the last paragraph of this of this particular concept, number 7 concept that we are doing. Now what does this mean? Look, what used to happen when industrialization was not there, people used to start their task and end their task by looking at the sun. People used to say that, okay, sun has come in, so the day has actually started. Now what will we do? We will start our work, and the moment sun rises in the evening, they stopped their work, and that's how they were actually doing their work. They were actually not so punctual with their work. They were not actually so systematic with their work. They didn't have any pressure. The workers who used to work in the agriculture areas, they didn't have any kind of pressure, right? They were not actually very punctual. But the moment industrialization came in, everything started, everything was actually being done on actually real times, and people used to work and used to have set their targets that today we're gonna produce these much of goods, today we're gonna produce high scale of goods. So for that we have to work consistently, we have to be very punctual. Punctuality started coming because there were pressure on them from the industries, there were pressure on them from the factory owners, who would always give them certain targets to complete within a certain time. So that's what it actually means. Now people were actually looking at the clock and utilizing their time, actually coming out with the proper output. That's what I would definitely use this word here. So people are actually looking at the output, that how much output they are producing out of a day, right? That's what actually was happening, right, prior to the so before industrialization or before capitalism, nothing was like that. But the moment industrialization came in, people started becoming punctual, people started looking for the output, people started working even at nights also. People used to do their duty at night shifts. So this is what actually was happening, right? So these are the changes that actually came due to the industrialization. All right. Okay. So I think you so kindly text me. I really want to have your feedback whether you have understood this. Okay. So this was the number 7 concept that we discussed today. Okay. Okay, clear. Yes. Okay, so I think the time has come to say you goodbye. We will do the next concept. We are just left with two or three concepts, and within 1 or 2 days, we are gonna complete this chapter definitely. And okay, so okay, so until then, stay safe, stay at home, and utilize your time and study hard. Okay, and until then, take care. All stay safe and stay at home. And God bless you all. Bye bye.